Season 6, we are finally getting what we've been teasing since the pilot with that newspaper, except, 5 years earlier, but hey, I like opening my Christmas presents early. You
Good.
Can't get any better than 5 years early. What can you tell us about Crisis?
Not much, but I will tell you this. Crisis is the best thing that ever happened to our show. Because what it's doing is we're fulfilling the promise of the premise, which was we promised 5 years ago to show you Crisis. You thought you're going to have to wait longer? No. It's coming right now, and it's creating an immediacy in our stories. It's also breaking up the season into 3 kind of separate parts. Pre-Crisis, all of the dread of wondering when this horrible thing is coming, what that's going to be like. Then Crisis itself. And then post-Crisis. What comes after that? It's a wild unknown that is freeing up the storytelling. And since I'm a very comic book type of guy, I used to write comic books, we're going to see more comic book geekery, I think, than ever before in the back half of Season 6.
I know you guys usually reveal the villain in the public, but what can you tell us about the main villain throughout this season?
That's tough because we're going to reveal it here in
Whatever you
in 2 hours.
Yeah.
That is very tough. I think this year's villain is chilling. I think what I would say is it kind of reminds me most of, and I'm a big fan of Reverse Flash and Zoom and Godspeed and all these great speedster villains, but I remember back in season 2 how Zoom was kind of scary a little bit. I think we're going to go on those waters of season 6. I think you'll see a little bit of that. Not that it's going to be Zoom. I don't want to imply that by any means, but I think the vibe of that kind of thrills and chills season, which is what I'm referring to it in season 6, is back.
You said chills twice, so Captain Cold?
Oh, I love Captain Cold. If I could get him back, I would in 2 seconds. You guys petition him. I love him so much.
So when it comes to comic book sort of things, now I know you can't tell us what you are going to do. Were there anything from the original Crisis on Infinite Earths that you might have wanted to do but had to drop?
We are trying to pack in every single thing from Crisis that we love into the crossover because all of the folks writing it, we love comic books so much. Now here's the twist. We may get a moment that we all love from the actual comic books, but it might be turned upside down and not in the way that you might have expected it in those pages, but honoring the exact moment. Does that make sense?
You're going to have Supergirl holding Superman then, is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that, but that's a good example. That's a perfect example. Sometimes in the society that we're in now, Crisis was written 30 years ago, you have to update a few things. I think kind of bring it into the 21st century, and hopefully we can do that in an honorable way that I think the fans hopefully will appreciate.
So with the events of next season, who do you think we are going to see kind of changing roles?
Killer Frost, without question. This is a big season for Killer Frost. I can't tell you how excited the writing staff is. We just keep coming up with more and more stuff for her because I feel very strongly that we've spent the first 5 seasons digging into Caitlin. Caitlin had a boyfriend, had a fiance, she's had highs and lows, she's gone through all these changes, and that's great. But we kind of have left Killer Frost a little bit on the back burner. It's time to correct that. So there are tons of Killer Frost stuff happening this season and quite early in the season, and I hope folks like it because some of it's poignant and some of it's hilarious. No, we won't. But you might get something in the back half of season 6 that is far crazier than the wonderful thing you're referring to in episode 401, which was one of my first episodes on the show, actually. Thank you for mentioning that.
So does that mean we've already seen one of Barry's children? Could we be seeing more of Barry's children that we know of from the comics, possibly?
Not this season, but we do discuss that on a pretty regular basis, and I hope in the seasons to come that we will be able to do that. It's something that I would really like to do.
If he survives the crisis.
I know. Well, let's face it, the show's called The Flash. I think it's going to be okay at some point.
Wally, and
That's true.
And Bart.
That's true. That's
Actually,
true.
Bart. Like, can we get a Bart at one point?
I think eventually we can. I think there's so much left to explore post-Crisis with all of Team Flash, and that seems to be the if I can't express one thing enough, I'm not saying it's a different show, but it is a very different feeling after Crisis because all the rules change, because there is no end date anymore. We don't know where we're going as writers. Of course we do, story-wise, but the characters don't have this thing hanging over them anymore. What does that mean? That's exciting.
We talk a little bit about the relationship between the Flash and his wife. And I mean, you guys have put him through so much. He knew she was going to get killed. The Speed Force, their daughter. What's next for them?
Well, sadly for Barry and Iris, it's not going to get better. We're going to put them through an even bigger ringer this season that you'll see very quickly in the first couple of episodes because Crisis is coming. And all that's going to do, though, and this is a great thing, is bring them closer together than ever before. And I think that's what really this whole season is about. When I mention deepening character emotions, that also means coming closer together as a family. Everybody in Team Flash, even the ones who don't find new relationships or new loves or who are already married, everyone will be coming closer together than ever before as a result of whether or not they survive Crisis.
Now, Carlos gave up Cisco gave up his powers.
Yes.
Is that going to play? Is he going to regret that? How is he going to fit into Crisis now that he's down 5? Obviously he's going to be part of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's great is not being Vibe anymore has given the character of Cisco Ramon a whole new palette to explore because he's equally as valuable as a scientist, as a technician, and as, quite frankly, a cool, groovy dude to Team Flash than he was as Vibe. And that's what he has to discover, and that's a big part of his journey in Season 6.